welcome. I am excited that you are here for tonight's topic. If you saw my stories that I just recently did, I told Renee that the title was "Your Marriage is Deteriorating Your Children." He always asked me the title to put it there on the social media platforms. And it's the first time that I got a reaction from Renee. Renee says, "Wait, what? What did you just say? You said that our marriage is deteriorating our children?" He goes, no. They're deteriorating our marriage. I mean, they're the handfuls. They're the ones who doesn't stop crying. They're the ones who can't verbalize and express what they're saying. He goes, we're good. We need to be careful that they don't deteriorate us. And so I said, don't worry, you're going to understand in the end of this life. And so I'm excited you're here. And if you're here, it's because you are not satisfied with your marriage. It doesn't necessarily mean that something drastic is taking place. It means that there is always room for it to get better. Renee and I have noticed, even right now, as we entered into a new phase in our lives with children, with small children, that we thought, hey, we're good. Our marriage is solid. And then River and Reed came, and they are testing and trying our foundation. And so there is always room for improvement. I have a philosophy that I'm trying to improve every single day in every area of my life, including my marriage, 1% every single day. I want to be able to look back today at yesterday and say, was I better today than I was yesterday? And I hope you can say the same, because here in Abundant Marriage, that's exactly what we do. We take marriages that are mediocre, that are lukewarm, that could use a sizzling up, and we reroute it. In 84 days, your marriage can go from mediocre to abundant. I have some of you asking, Amanda, what is this course you're talking about? Well, send me your email through DM, and you are going to get more information as we get closer, which we're getting pretty close. In the end of August, we start a new group for the Abundant Marriage course, and it is awesome. I'm so excited for you to hear the testimonials of couples, of marriages who have already successfully completed the program. And it's been honestly the joy of my life. And if you are accompanying us in the social medias, and I hope you have, maybe you saw, which was some of the wives were sending, Amanda, this is so awesome. I want my husband to participate in that. Well, the husbands of Abundant Marriage, they got together this week, right, Renee, on Monday night, and they had a Zoom meeting. And in the Zoom meeting, they were talking about a sermon that they were watching together. And they were talking about how they could be better leaders, how they could be better husbands. I mean, wouldn't you want your husband to participate in something like that? It was awesome. And Renee, there minimal facial expressions on that guy, but it said, Renee, how was it? And he's like, it was good. But because I can translate Renee, he means it was awesome, it was great. When are we having the next one? So let's get to it. If you have, friends or family that you say, you know what, man, I think this would be good for them, start sharing. Click that share button, share it with your family, share it with your friends. Your marriage is deteriorating your children. Let's get in it. Psalms 127:3 says that children are a blessing and a gift from the Lord. Psalm 127:3-5 says, behold, children are a heritage from God, the fruit of the womb a reward, like arrows in the hand, arrows, like arrows in the hand of a warrior are the children of one's youth. So look at us. We're pretty young. We got 2 boys. Blessed is the man who fills his quiver with them. Now, we're not going to take that one literal. At least Renee and I aren't. We're not going to fill it too much. We're going to fill it with just River and Reed. 2 is plenty for us. It says, he shall not be put to shame when he speaks with his enemies in his gate. So as you can tell, the Bible says, let's make the babies. Children are awesome. And it's something that many couples, when they get married, they look forward to. Often the question I get is, Amanda, when do you think is the right time to have babies, to have children? And I like to give it a 5-year rule, at least 5 years. And you're going to see why these 5 years are so important, because you want to make sure you have a solid foundation so that your marriage doesn't deteriorate your children. I've heard it before, and my mom would tell me all the time, Amanda, when you have children of your own, you are going to understand a dimension, an aspect, a clearer vision of the love of God, because truly it's something that words fail to express. It's the epitome of unconditional love. You know why it's unconditional? River and Reed, they're teething right now. They've been teething for a while. Please pray that their teeth just come out once and for all. They're typically good sleepers, but oh man, last night they were up from 11:30 till like 3:30 complaining. That was Reed. And then when we finally figured his situation out, River then wakes up around 5:30, 6 o'clock, and they usually wake up around 7:38. So we were roughing it. Renee and I, we have a hard time. We sleep early. We wake up early. We don't do this. We don't sleep past like 10 o'clock, okay? So these boys being up all night, it ruined us. So children are awesome. Absolutely. They're great. They're fantastic. But we need to make sure that God enables us, that we are equipped so that our marriage creates abundant lives for our children and vice versa. You know, unfortunately, what I often hear is, Amanda, my marriage was great until... I don't want children to be the end of my marriage. I want it to add to my marriage. You know why? Because God uses our marriage, as you saw last week, to show us different character, parts of our character that needs to be restored, renewed. And then He also uses children to take us one step further in our character development. C.S. Lewis, you know me, I love quotes, and I love me some C.S. Lewis. He says this. I want you to remember this quote. This is going to be our starting point for our journey here tonight. I want you to keep this quote throughout the entire hour that we're together. It says this. To love you as I should, this is C.S. Lewis speaking, I must worship God as Creator. When I have learned to love God better than my earthly dearest, I shall love my earthly dearest better than I do now. Summary, when I love God first, I will love my spouse, in this case Renee, better. And so far as I learn to love my earthly dearest at the expense of God and instead of God, I shall be moving toward the state in which I shall not love my earthly dearest at all. He says, on the flip side, if I prioritize, if I love my spouse over God, in reality, I am not going to love them at all. And then he concludes with my favorite line of this quote. When first things are put first, second things are not suppressed, but increased. I'm going to say that again. When first things are put first, second things are not suppressed. They don't become, overlooked. They don't become dusty. No. They become increased. They are also prioritized as they should be. So in the kingdom of God, there is a sort of hierarchy, okay? Seek first the kingdom of God and all other things shall be added to you. Well, my relationship to God is in first place. It is my priority. Because when it is, then, look at this, second things are not suppressed but increased. I am better able to love Renee if I love God first. And the same is true with your children. You are better able to love your children and to train them, guide them, instruct them, to model for them when you love your spouse, when you love your wife, and you love your husband. I have a few husbands, they come to me all the time and they joke around. And, they tell me, Amanda, I have to laugh about it so I don't cry about it. And they say, you know what, compared to my children and even my dog, I'm like third or fourth place in my house. If you have two kids, I'm in third place. And if you have two kids and a dog, he says, then you're in fourth place. And husbands are joking, but there's a whole lot of truth in their dilemma and their frustration. And this, unfortunately, is the reality that is going on in a lot of our marriages. And this is why your marriage is deteriorating your children. Say, wait, hold on, Amanda, hold on. So how is my marriage deteriorating my children? Well, here's why. Because without a strong marriage, without a loving environment, your kid will not thrive. Your kid will not thrive if your marriage is not thriving. So when you fill their love tank, when you fulfill all of their needs, when you ignore your husband and when you ignore your wife in order to fill their love tank, you're actually doing them a disservice. Because as C.S. Lewis says, when God is first, we love our spouses best. And in the case of a spouse and a child, it's not saying that, they're more important or we love them most. God does have a hierarchy. And when God says that two shall become one flesh, you are literally one with your husband, with your wife. And when the two of you are operating in all of what is one flesh, your children will see you. They will watch you. They'll mirror you. They won't feel less loved. They will feel more loved. Often with the husband sort of complaining, and understandably so, that he's in third place or fourth place in the lives of their wives, you have then the wives saying this. Well, Amanda, it's not that they're in third place or fourth place or whatever, and the husband rolls his eyes. He says, here's the thing, the kids are small. The kids need our attention. And when they get older, I will then be able to give more attention to my husband. So this is usually the wives, okay? The wives will say they're so little. They're not dependent. My husband, he's independent. He can do things on his own. He can bathe himself. He can change his diapers. He can make his food. He needs to be a little bit more dependent. A little bit more independent. The children are very dependent of me. And the wife looks at the husband and almost like reassuring him, like, don't worry. As they get older, we'll have time to fix. I'll start attending to our marriage. Just give it some time. But here's the problem. The problem is that this is a false security. It's an illusion, because you start to shift further and further and further apart. And as has been the reality of the marriages that I help, at times it almost seems like it's too late to be saved, that the gap is just too big. It seems like there is nothing left. There's nothing to give. There's nothing there, which is why God's hierarchy is not to lessen the love that your children fears. In fact, it's to create even more abundance, not only between you and your husband, you and your wife, but also more abundance in your family unit. So stay with me. You'll see your marriage is deteriorating your children. But when we follow God's plan, when we love Him first, when we are one flesh with our husband, with our wife, with our spouse, then children, our love for them, they're not going to feel less loved. They're going to feel more loved. I want to give some research to you here. I think research is so important, and it's awesome that what God says in His Word in the Bible is backed up by research. I have a lot of couples who come and says, Amanda, well, is there research on this? Yeah, there is research on this. So here we go. Pew Research asked young people in 2010. They asked them this question. Very interesting. The question says, what is more important for your happiness? What is more important for a happy life? And then they give them two choices, kids or a good marriage. What would you choose? What would make you happier? What would guarantee a happy life? Kids or a good marriage? Well, interestingly enough, the response kids won by a margin 3 times as big than when researchers asked the question in 1997. That generation voted a good marriage. This generation is voting kids 3 times more. But here's the catch. Because the research is showing this, therapists, a lot of them are saying this is probably the reason, the why that divorce is doubling. Look at this and look at where it's doubling. It's doubling among folks in their 50s and it's tripling among folks over 65 as compared to those 25 years ago. Isn't that interesting? Look at the research. What would make you happiest? What is most important, kids or a good marriage? It seems like everyone in our generation, 2010 and up, is voting kids, kids, kids versus generations of the past. But it is also the case that divorce is on the rise. Could this be the reason? Now look, many researchers are calling it the empty nest split. Empty nest split, meaning that as soon as the kids launch, as soon as they get out of the house, that then mom and dad are looking at each other, and that's all that they are. Mom and dad, they're no longer wife, they're no longer husband. They are complete strangers who they had one mission. The only reason we're together is to raise this child. Now that they're raised, see ya. Parents get so invested in raising children, which isn't a bad thing, okay? I have children of my own. It's not a bad thing. We are invested. We sacrifice in order to raise River and Reed. But the problem arises when, and listen carefully, when raising children is the only reason that the team is together. Renee and I aren't together to raise River and Reed. We are together because we love each other, because we are one flesh, because we've committed our lives to each other, and ... Now we raise River and Reed. But they're not the only reason that we are together. I had a wife recently, in an abundant marriage. Before she started abundant marriage, she literally looked at her husband and says this: the only reason I'm still with you is because I don't want to cause turmoil in the life of our daughter. But as soon as she goes to college, I am out of here. And the husband looks at me and he goes, Amanda, what do I do? And I said, oh, buddy, I'm with you. I have no idea. Wait, what did you say again? Can you repeat that? Amanda, the only reason I am with this man, the only reason why I'm still in my home is because of my daughter. But when she leaves, I leave. How is a husband supposed to feel in a situation such as this? You know, with him, I'd be like, are you kidding me? I'm out of here. It's not a problem that she loves her daughter, that she's raising her daughter, but the problem becomes when the only reason she is still in her marriage is because of the daughter. And this is why the empty nest split happens. When the daughter's gone, or the son's gone, or the children are gone, people leave. Carl Filmer, he is a researcher from Cornell University, and he was also researching. He wrote an incredible book. He researched over 700 couples well in their 60s, 70s, and they were still together, and he asked them tons of different questions, tons of great data. And he said that one of the most dangerous things that he found, one of his dangerous discoveries, similar to the empty nest split, was the middle-aged blur. Middle-aged blur. What did he mean by that? He goes, this middle-aged blur is when people have kids, they have activities, they're working, and it's like everyone is just in their own little world. No one is connecting. No one is being physically or emotionally intimate. He goes, it was amazing to see how couples, they could not remember. They literally could not remember the last time they were alone with their significant others. How about you? When was the last time, for those who have kids, when was the last time that you were alone by yourself with your husband, with your wife? And here's the problem. When they finally came back to consciousness, let's say after the kids left, around their 50s maybe, 55, 60s, they had a hard time going to restaurants and keeping up a conversation. Do you see the problem? It's such focus on the kids, on work, on the activities. Take them to soccer practice. Take them to a play date. Do this. that they are losing sight of each other. And so here's the thing. Your marriage is deteriorating your children. You know why? Because you are not prioritizing your marriage. Husbands, wives, don't forget that that is also a role that you play. Sure, your mom, sure, your dad, but it's one of the hats. It's not the only hat. Sure, you are a professional, but that is not the only hat. And our marriage, your marriage, should not get the breadcrumbs. You are doing a disfavor to your children when you are just fulfilling their needs and their wants and sacrificing them, thinking that you're doing them a favor. You are not. We are modeling a family dynamic that is not biblical, it is not healthy, and actually it is very destructive. How many teenagers do I have now, you know what, saying to me, Amanda, I do not want to have kids. Why? Because my parents are always fighting, and they're always fighting about us. Can you imagine? Can you imagine that teenagers who are about to start families don't want to start families because they have PTSD from the experiences that they have had at home? You need to prioritize your marriage. You see, Renee, look, it's getting better. Renee said, what are you talking about? We're not deteriorating them, they're deteriorating us. Which is why I want to take a stand in prioritizing my marriage so that not only are we abundant, but that I provide an abundant life for my children, River and Reed. So I'm going to give you some tips. I want this one to be very practical. Grab your papers, grab your pens, because you're going to want to write this down, and I want you to implement. Let me tell you, what would you say, Renee, these last few months have really tested us. It's really tried us. I can tell you one thing. Renee has the patience of Job, okay? You know, the guy in the Bible who went, through hell and back. That's the kind of patience Renee has. I'm the opposite. I have less patience than Renee has. But when River and Reed came along, I don't know if it's a mom thing, I don't know if God develops something in us, but it was amazing to see that I am more patient with River and Reed, and Renee is more patient everywhere else, okay? I've only seen Renee lose it 3 times in his life. Now, I've been with him pretty much I've known Renee since he was like 6 years old. So that's a pretty crazy track record, right? I've only seen him lose it 3 times, and every time has to do with children. The first time, Reed, can you turn the AC? I'm getting hot. These lights, it's making me sweaty. So the first time I saw Renee lose it, we were at a game night, a couple's game night. And the couple, they had children. Some of our friends had children already back then. We were newlyweds, I think, right? Newlyweds? And this kid was out of control. He was like jumping on the table. It was about time for him to go to bed, but like all the friends were there. So he was just excited, and he was like going crazy. And Renee was just watching this whole thing. Renee has a hard time with like loud noise and chaos. He's just a patient guy. He likes nature. He likes to do things on his own. You know, he likes things like fishing. And Renee just got up and he just shouted, "Stop!" And everyone looked at him because it was so uncharacter-like. It was so foreign. No one's ever seen anything like that come out of Renee. So that was the first time. And then the other 2 times had to do with River and Reed. They were just crying, complaining, or fighting, or couldn't get along. Or it was like, "Stop, I'm tired, I'm done." And everyone sort of just looks at him because it's like, where did that come from? And so as you can see, River and Reed have really been... It's been a struggle, but at the same time, it's helping us look at different parts of our character, of our lives, of our personalities, of our temperament, and saying, you know what? I want to be even more patient because I want to be able to remain calm even in the chaos. And it's really hard, especially when we're not sleeping right. You know, they're crying, they're cranky. We're also cranky because we're not sleeping. And so I'm going to give you tips that I've currently having to implement into my marriage to make sure that Renee feels as though he is my priority, because he is my priority, not only to glorify and honor God, but also because I do not want to deteriorate the lives of my children. And so here we go. You need to prioritize your marriage. Write it down. Number 1, I want you to think yourself this. Are you neglecting your spouse? Are you neglecting your spouse? What do I mean by neglecting? You know, with children, you're always checking in on them. Oh, did they eat? Did they bathe? Did they sleep well? Usually, when Renee and I, we go to bed at night, and Renee says, "Oh, how was the boys' days? Did they do this? Did they play? Were they cranky? Were they good?" Duh, duh, duh. We're always checking in. We're always figuring out, and especially as they get older. I know for my family, for my families, or for my friends, or for the couples, I know that they're always checking in on their children, especially when I attend to their children, when I speak to their children. Moms and dads are constantly, sending me text messages. How are their sessions today, Amanda? And how are they? How is school? They're always checking in. They're always trying to make sure. Here's the thing. Don't think that just because your significant partner is an adult, which I hope they're an adult, that they don't need you to check in, that they also don't have needs that need to be met. If you haven't seen it yet, I recommend that you go see it. I did 2 lives. One is entitled The 4 Needs of Every Wife, and the other is The 4 Needs of Every Husband. Please, please go watch that. Your children has needs? Absolutely. Should you meet them? Absolutely. But your husband has needs, your wife has needs, and those also must need to be met, okay? And so one of the ways that Renee and I meet it, I always say this, and I will continuously say this every time you watch. If you have been with us for a long time, you know that I absolutely love walks together. Our walks together is something important. I'm going to give you some other things that you can implement in your marriage. But the best way that I have found to make sure that I am not neglecting Renee and checking in on him is during our walks. No phones. Renee and I, super early in the morning or super late in the evening, a minimum of 30 minutes. You could do 15. We do 30 minutes. We have a lot going on. And this is where the checking in. Hey, how are you? Hey, how's work? We've noticed, we went a few days without being able to do this because if you follow us on social media, you see we're currently building the I Believe headquarters. It's our nonprofit, and we've been just working around the clock, making sure that we have enough sand. Really, that's what we're doing, making sure you have enough sand. So Renee rented an excavator. We were only going to have it for 1 week. It was going to cost tons of money. So, last night we worked till like 9 p.m. on this excavator, trying to make sure getting enough sand that we need. And so we've neglected our walks together. Because we've neglected our walks together, we were arguing, getting frustrated with each other more than usual. And it was so interesting. Renee has a harder time at expressing himself than I do. And so recently he's found that the best way is to sort of write me a letter. And so he wrote me a letter, and he expressed all of the ways in which, essentially in my head, I read, oh, he's feeling neglected. He talked about the stresses of work and the stresses of this building and how he's not sleeping well because of River and Reed. These are all things that I would have known if we were keeping up with our daily walks. But because we got distracted, we weren't walking. Because we weren't walking, he wasn't able to vent. He wasn't able to express his needs. So ask yourself the question, are you neglecting your spouse? And in the midst of all this, Renee, I came up one morning and we were just having a rough time. We weren't connecting. And he's like, listen, I just found super cheap tickets. I think it was like $35. It was insane. He found $35 ticket to Colorado. So together, the two of us, it was $70 for us to go to Colorado, there and back. And he's like, I'm booking this thing. End of August, we're going. And we're going alone without River and Reed. I said, hey, Mom, Dad, you guys are going to have to help us out. Renee's like, I'm going to book it 3 days. And I said, don't book it 3 days, book it 4 days. And he says, okay. So we booked it 4 days. And my mom's like, oh, you don't feel bad? You should take your children. And I said, I don't feel bad whatsoever. You know why? Because my marriage will not deteriorate the lives of my children. In order for that to happen, I need to prioritize my marriage. I need to make sure my husband's needs are getting met. He needs to make sure my needs are getting met. We are a partnership, and we're going to go to Colorado, and we're going to come back recharged, excited, because our roles of wife and husband will be fulfilled. It is a priority so that we can come back and we can do a better job at being mom and dad. Are you neglecting your spouse? Ask yourself. Honestly, look in the mirror and ask yourself that question. Number 2, Remember sort of the wife's subconscious belief of, I need to focus on the children because they're young and they're small and they need our attention. Well, Linda Bloom, she's a licensed marriage and family therapist. She says that people are playing with fire when they put careers and kids first and don't pay attention to their marriage. Remember what C.S. Lewis says. First of all, the priority is your relationship with God, okay? That is number one. If that one is not good, if your vertical relationship with God is not up to date, all of your horizontal relationships are going to go down the tubes, okay? So he's number one always. And now your husband, your wife, they also need to be a priority. You are one flesh. So I honestly put it like this. And again, it's not to say you love your spouse more than your children. Of course not. But in my head, this is the hierarchy. God, spouse, children. Why? C.S. Lewis. When first things are put first, second things are not suppressed but increased. So do not play with fire. Do not prioritize. Make it more important at the neglect of your spouse. Just think about it. You spend, let's say, an average of 25 years raising your children, all right? At 25, River and Reed are going to get the boot. So you spend about 25 years raising children. And that's because I have two, and this is why I prayed for twins. Thank you, Jesus, for twins. I always have to remind myself, listen, you prayed for this craziness. You got it. Be grateful. Be thankful. They're insane sometimes, okay? Nuts, crazy. When one's not crying, don't worry. The other one will deliver. And it doesn't matter if you buy them the same exact toys in the same exact color. They will fight over the same exact toy that is the same exact color. But don't worry. Even when they're not together and you think, oh, look, they're not fighting, then they will cry that they are not with each other, even though they were just fighting with each other. It's loony town here, okay? It's crazy. So here's the thing. You spend 25 years raising children. If you have more than two, God bless your soul. If you have more than two and they're staggered, right, because you didn't have 5 children all at once, it's more than 25 years. And so think about it. If you neglect your spouse during this time, you will end up, I should say, being complete strangers at the end of those 25 years. And then this subconscious belief or conscious belief of, don't worry, I'll attend to my marriage later. Later is going to be too late. You know why? Because your husband, ladies, usually this happens to us, your husband will have so much resentment towards you. You know why he's going to say? Because he'll be like, oh, now you want me? Now you want my attention? Now, when those little brats have gone, now you want my attention? This is how the husband was feeling. Wait, what are you talking about? So you're telling me that when our daughter's gone, you're gone because you're only in this marriage because of her? Wait, you're telling me that you're going to prioritize me after the kids leave? No, I want to be your priority now. So look, at the end of the day, this is doing your children no good. I've already said this, because you need to model an abundant marriage. Many young people are scared to have children. Is your marriage deteriorating your children? If it is, start to prioritize your marriage. Here's number 3. We need to have healthy boundaries with our children. And in order for that to happen, we need to talk. Communicate with your spouse. I say this. In our marriage, beds are for sleeping and for sex. Do River and Reed sleep in bed with us? They don't. Do I know families that cuddle up, snuggle up with their children? They do. It's not every single night, because where does sex then take place, right? And so it's important that you talk. If it works for you, like I had a friend says, well, what we like to do is the children know that at night it's sacred. At night, no one's coming to bed. Bed is for mom and dad. But in the morning, they can crawl into bed with us. Awesome. That's, and when River and Reed, they're already starting to jump out of their cribs. But so whether we like it or not, maybe they'll start climbing up the stairs and jumping in bed with us. That's awesome. Cuddle in together. Maybe make it special. Sunday mornings or Saturday mornings, everyone gets to cuddle in mom and dad's bed. Sure. One of the things that Renee and I have is whenever they're feeling a little sick or, teeth coming in. I know last night Reed just could not sleep. And so Renee brought him to our bed and we cuddled up with him. But have a conversation about it. Talk about it. A lot of husbands are feeling neglected. A lot of husbands are feeling that and you'll see, one of their needs is sex. A husband's need is to have sex. But women don't, oh, they just think about sex, they just think about sex. Yes, sex is important, but it's what sex represents. And sex represents that their wives are desiring them. Sex represents their wives giving them this affection. I need you. I desire you. I want one. That is what is important. And then that is seen in all of its beauty and all of its glory in sex. But there is so much more to it than simply your husband wants sex. Okay? So have healthy boundaries. Make sure that you are on the same page. So you need to communicate continually and daily. Children, they love to divide and conquer. I see it all the time. Dad disagrees with mom and mom disagrees with dad. Here's the thing. I also think it's healthy that you disagree. Your children need to see that, hey, mom and dad don't necessarily agree, but they are able to have a conversation. They are able to, in a positive way, solve their differences. It's unrealistic to expect that you will always be on the same exact page as your husband, on the same exact page as your wife. Of course not. But your children need to understand that you guys are a team, that they're not going to be able to coerce you and manipulate you so that you guys are constantly fighting with each other. While you guys have different preferences, different personalities, and maybe you will disagree on some things, that is okay. But at the end of the day, your children need to know that they're not going to be able to put you two against each other. They will not be able to divide and conquer. Okay? Here's the next thing. This is something that often comes up. Oftentimes, relationships that already have some problems, they think that they're going to add children in the mix and children are going to solve your problem. Children are not going to solve, and honestly, they're going to just throw gasoline in the problems. Don't use children to not face your problems head on, because at times children are getting all of the attention because mom and dad are fighting so much. They're so frustrated with each other that they're just feeding into their children to ignore the problems that are going on. This is very common. But then there's even one step further, which is what I believe even more dangerous. Because what's connected to this is, here's the situation. You and I, we need intimacy. Physical intimacy and emotional intimacy. The only place that we can get both physical and emotional intimacy is in marriage. Sex, right? Physical intimacy, and then emotional intimacy. Being vulnerable, empathetic, sharing your fears, your dreams, your traumas. Friendships, you can have emotional intimacy with someone and speak about your situation. You can have physical intimacy, hugging your parents and hugging your children, kissing your children. But sex and deep, intimate conversations, the place that happens is in your marriage. But here's the thing. At times, when children are getting all the attention, whether it's because mom and dad are running from focusing and solving problems in their marriage, the other thing is that parents will start to transfer their needs of intimacy onto their children. And usually moms, we do this more than dads. Do dads do it also? Absolutely. Okay? Generally speaking, but both can fall into this trap. Because you are not then getting your emotional or physical intimacy, your needs met in your spouse where you should be getting it met, you then transfer it all into your children. So I have wives who used to complain that they weren't spending enough time with their husbands, that their husbands weren't, right? Quality time, the 5 love languages: quality time, acts of service, physical touch, words of affirmation, and gifts. So I'd have wives complaining, oh, he never buys me a gift, or oh, he's not giving me physical touch, or oh, he's not spending quality time with me. But as soon as those children are born, they could care less. You know why? Because they're getting their needs met from their children now. And so the husband is like, I don't care. I don't need you anymore. Why? Because now I'm spending quality time with our children. And now I'm getting all of the physical touch with their cuddles and their kisses and their mommies. I'm getting all of their words of affirmation with mommy, I love you. Or dad is now getting it from his little girl. Dad, you're the superhero. You're the best thing ever. right? And so we need to make sure that we are not avoiding problem solving with our spouse and then distracting ourselves with our children. And B, we need to make sure that we are not transferring our needs for physical and emotional intimacy on our children and then further neglecting our marriage. Is your marriage deteriorating your children? Some things that have been helpful to us during this new phase that we are experiencing, some of the things that are helpful to the couples of abundant marriage. I want to give you 4. All right, I want to give you 4 things that could and will be helpful to you. Keep writing this down. You just ask yourself questions. You just ask yourself, am I neglecting my spouse? You asked yourself, do I have this subconscious or conscious belief that, when the kids leave, then I'll tend to my marriage? Do I have healthy boundaries? Am I talking? Am I communicating? I just had you reflect and think, am I trying to avoid the problems in my marriage? Am I no longer complaining that my spouse is not giving me quality time or physical touch because I'm getting those needs met in my children, of which, sure, you can get them met there, but it's important also that you get them met in your marriage, okay? And so now I want you to do a few things. If you answered yes to most of those questions, or some of those questions, or even one of those questions, it's important that you do this. And maybe you who don't have children, and maybe you're thinking about when you're going to have children, keep these things in mind so that you are planning ahead. Create an abundant marriage now. Your marriage needs to be awesome every step of the way so that we do not deteriorate the lives of our children. Number 1, remember that kids are not the reason you are together. And if it is, we need to figure that out. You don't want to focus on it so much that you can no longer figure out each other. Yes, kids need attention. They need sacrifice. Especially when they're little, they're going to need more of us. But kids are not the only reason that you are together. And if it is, you need to check yourself. You need to revisit that. If it is, it's a mediocre marriage. It's a mediocre marriage. Waiting 25 years, being miserable with your significant other, waiting for this kid to then go off to college so that you can get a divorce? What in the world? God does not want that. I can tell you that right now. God does not want that. 2, this is something that Renee and I were doing. We were doing this whole divide and conquer. I explained it to you in how kids try to do it, right? They try to divide and then conquer you because they try to put you against each other. Our mom said I could do this. Well, dad said I could do this. And if mom tells me something, I'm going to go and ask dad. And then we're fighting because of that. But one of the things that Renee and I were doing, because River and Reed are too young to make us fight yet, is I would do things like this. Okay, Renee, you go make the boys smoothie, and I'll go give them a bath. Okay, Renee, you're gonna go put them to sleep, and I'm going to prepare dinner. We would do these things. We were trying to divide and conquer, but what we were doing was we were dividing and conquering our marriage, like destroying our marriage. And so, listen, I'm all for this. Hey, Amanda, I know you were tired, and I'm going to give you, 1 hour to get in the hot tub and just relax with a book, and I'm going to hang out with River and Reed. That's fine. The problem becomes when every single little thing of the day you're dividing to try to conquer. You're not dividing and conquering. You're dividing and destroying your marriage. Start doing things together. Will it take a little longer? Sure. But at least you do things together and you cultivate a space where you're together. So instead of, hey, I'm going to bathe the kids and you're going to do the smoothie, we're going to bathe the kids together. We're going to do the smoothies together. We're going to put them to sleep together. We're going to make dinner together. While he's washing the dishes, I'm cutting the vegetables where they're next to each other. It's so hard sometimes to create more time. We cannot create more time, so we need to manage our time. And there's no reason why minimal, ordinary activities, small everyday chores, they can be done together. And by doing it together, you are creating more time to talk, to laugh, to complain, whatever. And so that's something that we've learned the hard way these last we were trying to create more time together. Let's do this quickly so that we can get to bed. But then we get to bed and we were so tired and we just fall asleep. So now we do things differently. Maybe does it take us a little longer to get to bed? Sure. But the whole prepping the boys, we were doing it together. Divide and conquer sometimes, okay? Renee, go fishing and I'm going to do this. But you can also create memories as a family. Let's go fishing together. Let's do this together. Sometimes what we like to do is you take one twin, I'll take the other twin, and then we swap just so that we can give them that individual time together. Sure, but I hope you understand what I'm saying. I'm just saying don't make every single thing a divide and conquer. Last night, we had to get more diesel for the excavator. And Renee was like, hey, I'm going to go get diesel. Do you want to come with me? And honestly, my gut reaction was to be like, absolutely not. I do not want to go to the gas station right now with you at 9 o'clock at night to go get diesel. That does not sound like a fun thing. I'll just make us, I'm going to honestly get ready for bed. I'm just going to shower. I'm going to read. I'm going to get ready for bed. And I said, you know what? I'm going to go. And so that's what I mean. So we went together. We spent time together in the car, sure, listening to music, talking about the boys. Do you get what I'm saying? Okay, here's the next one. This is a big one. Don't keep score. Don't keep score. Listen, you cannot take an attitude of marriage of 50-50. There's no way. How is everyone going to calculate? Okay, Renee, at the end of the day, give me all the to-do, the list that you did for River and Reed, and this is everything I did. Let's make sure. This is not a 50-50 proposition. You're not going to get exactly what you put in. Definitely not with children. I am not getting what I put in with River and Reed. The key to success is having both husband and wife try to give more than they are getting out of the relationship. Have the mentality, have the spirit of a servant. Be generous. Be generous. Stop keeping score. Stop keeping, oh, you did this. Oh, but I did this. Oh, but I changed 2 poopy diapers and you only changed 1 poopy. I mean, come on, guys. Come on. This is not a 50-50 thing. There's no way. You are at times going to have to put more in than you're getting out, and that is okay. And studies show that it will produce a happier marriage. Look, research from the University of Virginia, National Marriage Project, studied the role of generosity in the marriages of 2,870 men and women. And this is what they concluded. They defined generosity as this. Generosity, as defined by this study, was the virtue of giving good things to one's spouse freely, and they use this word, of course I loved it, and abundantly. This is how they're defining generosity for this study. Giving to your spouse freely and abundantly. So something simply as, this is something Renee often does, and I'm very appreciative of him for doing this. In the morning, he always makes smoothies, okay? Smoothies for everyone. And this is generosity. This is giving. If you think, oh, well, I made smoothies every single day, and when was the last time that you made me breakfast? No keeping score, okay? Being generous. And look at what they concluded. Researchers quizzed men and women on how often they behaved generously toward their partners. And by that, they meant how often did they express affection? How willing were they to forgive? How willing were they to go the second mile? And after this research, they found that men and women with the highest score on the generosity scale were more likely to report that they were very happy in their marriage. But check this out. The benefits of generosity were even more pronounced, even more seen among couples with children. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that awesome? So, look at what it said. Among the parents who posted above average scores for marital generosity, 50% reported being very happy together. You know why? Because they were very generous. Be generous in your marriage. And on the flip side, those who rated their generosity on the lower scores, only 14% claimed to be very happy. I guess Jesus was right when he says, blessed is he who serves than is served. I came to serve, not to be served. Gandhi, the best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others. Give, give, give. I don't know how it works. I don't know the mathematics of generosity, but I know that when we are generous, it seems like we are the ones who are mostly benefited. And then I'm going to read this quote here from Virginia Bradford Wilcox, the researcher of this study, and she said this: in marriage, we are expected to do our fair share when it comes to housework, childcare, and being faithful. But generosity is going above and beyond the ordinary expectation with small acts of service and making an effort, an extra effort to be affectionate. Make an extra effort to give freely and abundantly to your spouse without keeping score. Generosity is going to produce a happy marriage. You saw it here, 50% reported being very happy who reported high scores on generosity. Now look, these researchers, I love these researches, right? Because it makes you see that what the Bible is saying, that there is scientific proof. Not that it needs scientific proof because it's the Word of God, but I love it when science and Scripture comes together like that. And here's the thing. Look, because of the daily pressures that we experience, the distractions, the dynamics of modern life, it's crazy. Career and children. A couple doesn't necessarily need to be dysfunctional to start growing distant over time. Chaos and craziness and fighting isn't the reason why you might be feeling extra distant. But working long hours, the demands of raising children can push the date nights, the sex, the romantic vacation as last priority instead of first priority. However, we need to prioritize our marriage. You know why? Because your marriage is deteriorating your children. Last research I have for you guys, and then I'm going to give you more tips. I hope this has been useful. I hope these are practical things that you can apply now. I hope it opened your eyes to a blind spot. Last research I have for you guys, researchers at UCLA, they observed 30 dual career couples, meaning both mom and dad had jobs and young children. And they started to research what were their daily challenges. And they saw that it was hard for them to find opportunities in cultivating and creating a strong relationship. And here's the thing, because they weren't prioritizing their marriage or finding time to, it was deteriorating the lives of their children and consequently their marriage. Look at what they discovered. Oh man, this saddens me. And I don't want this to be the case in my marriage or your marriage. They found 5 things. They discovered 5 things in these dual career couples who also had young children. Number 1, they spent less than 10% of their time at home with each other and without their children around. What was that first question I asked you earlier? How much time do you spend with just your spouse, with no children? Look at this, only 10% of their time spent with each other and without their children. 2, they were career focused with long working hours, partner 1, and have a double burden of work and childcare, partner 2. In other words, maybe dad is working long hours, and mom, not only is she working long hours at her job, but then she's working long hours at home, taking care of the house and tending to the children. Look at number 3. They prioritize children and household needs over the needs of their spouse. Remember, just because an adult is an adult does not mean that they don't have needs. We need to meet the needs of our children, absolutely. But we also need to meet the needs of our spouse. Look at this, number 4. They became more like roommates, drifting apart emotionally and physically. You see, these are not bad people. These are not people who are having arguments and disagree. No, they're living everyday lives. There's no dysfunction, but they're growing slowly apart. And finally, the last one, they miss important opportunities to connect emotionally on a daily basis. And so this is what I want to capitalize in. I want you to be intentional about creating time for you to spend together. You saw the list. Go back and rewind so that you can write it down. Let's listen to the research, and most importantly, let's listen to God. Let's prioritize our marriages, because when first things are first, second things do not get suppressed, they get increased. Look, quickly write it down. Number 1, eat together. Eat together. You know, oftentimes meal times with kids, or sometimes you're so tired you plop on the couch and you're just watching Netflix, or you're browsing through your phone. You go to restaurants, people are browsing through their phones. Well, make mealtime important, whether it's breakfast, whether it's lunch, whether it's dinner. Try to find at least one meal that you can have together where you are having conversation. Shut the phone off, shut the TV off, and just speak to each other. One of the things that Renee and I like to do is we like to shower together. Shower together. Maybe this is something that you can incorporate. You both need a shower, right? Do it together. Find time to do things together more than to do things apart. Do not divide and conquer. Here's the next one. Wake up and sleep together. I always say this. It's crazy. If you're a night owl and your spouse is a morning person, or you're not a morning person, it's so hard because you leave and they haven't even woken up, and then they sleep and you haven't gotten home. Throughout the day, everyone's doing their plenty of activities. So try to wake up together and sleep together. Even if in the morning, if your wife wants to sleep in a little bit more, at least cuddle a little bit. Stay a little longer, cuddle in bed. And at night, find time to spend time together. You know, if one has to sleep earlier, if one has to sleep later, at least try to read something together. At least use that moment and say, you know what, before we sleep, let's pray together and let's express something that we are grateful for each other. This is something that Renee and I have incorporated. We like to wake up together and we like to sleep together. So if sometimes Renee has to wake up a little earlier, he does, but we make it a priority at least to either wake up together or sleep together. If you can do both, the more the merrier. Here's 3 more that I have for you. When you leave for the day and when you reunite in the end of the day, capitalize on these moments. Leave for work with what John Gottman likes to say, a 6-second kiss. Kiss each other before you leave, because what happens is now your brain is almost expecting the return. And when you return home, you know what research has shown to be really relaxing? A hug. At least a 30-second hug. If your husband comes home stressed out, if your wife comes home stressed out, try to do that. Implement this habit. Leave with a 6-second kiss and come home knowing that you are going to give a 30-second hug so that both of you can de-stress. As soon as we're done with this live, I'm going to give Renee a 30-second hug because of last night's ordeal. We are tired. We're going to give each other a 30-second hug. And let's see if the research is correct. Let's see if hugging really relaxes us. Talking daily. I'm going to always tell you guys, find time to walk together. And last one, exercise together. I want to leave you guys with this. If this video impacted you, if it was important for you, if you liked it, share it. I'm going to leave it on Facebook for 24 hours. I'm going to re-upload it on Instagram a little later. Share it. And if you have to, maybe you're watching it alone, maybe you want to watch it with your wife, watch it with your husband, let's share it so that we can create community with abundant marriages. Remember, if couples do nothing to actively improve their relationship, even if they're not doing anything destructive, the relationship will still worsen over time. Did you hear that? Saying, well, we're not fighting all the time, we're just not spending time together. If you are not being intentional about it, even if destruction, even if you guys aren't yelling at each other, cursing at each other, hitting each other, it doesn't matter. Even if nothing destructive is happening, the relationship will still worsen over time. Relationships, as Kyle Benson says, relationships thrive when couples realize that seemingly insignificant moments, such as loving hug and a kiss when one partner comes home, are often the most significant of them all. So your marriage, if it is not prioritized, will deteriorate your children. You are not doing them a favor by fulfilling all of their needs, giving all of your attention to them. No. Prioritize your marriage and your children's needs. They will be met. I guarantee you. Remember, children are a blessing. They are a gift from God. Of course, God wants us to prioritize them. But children should not be the end of your marriage. Oh, no, no. It should add to an even more abundant marriage. All right, guys. I hope it was helpful. I'll see you next time.